I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped into the lobby. The air felt tight, like the building itself was holding its breath. People walked around me in their usual rush, but their eyes skated away a little too quickly, like they knew something I didn't. And maybe they did. Maybe everyone saw the storm coming except the one person standing directly in its center. Me. I had only come downstairs to grab a package. A simple, ordinary errand. But the universe has a strange way of choosing ordinary moments to change your life forever. The envelope was waiting for me at the front desk, thin and crisp, my name printed in bold black letters. At first, I thought it was a contract from a client. Or maybe a billing statement. But the receptionist didn't smile when she handed it over. She just swallowed hard, avoided my eyes, and whispered, "Good luck. Good luck?" I remember tearing the flap open right there in the lobby. The world didn't slow down, I did. Everything inside me froze as I stared at the words printed neatly across the page. 30-day eviction notice. For a second, all I heard was the soft hum of the elevators. Then the rush of footsteps. Then my own heartbeat, pounding like a warning bell deep inside my chest. I thought it had to be a mistake. An error. A mixed dash-up dot, but halfway down the page, her name appeared in an ink so sharp it might as well have been carved into the paper. Marissa Halbrook. Honor, the same woman who never looked at me without lifting her chin. The same woman who treated me like I was a temporary inconvenience in her pristine glass kingdom. The same woman who once said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "Success doesn't grow everywhere, dear. Some people aren't built for buildings like this." I wasn't built for buildings like this. That line echoed in me like a dare. I never accepted until now. I remember walking to her office on autopilot. My legs moved, but everything else inside me felt heavy, wrong, twisted in a way I couldn't untangle. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even scared. I was just numb. Like my emotions were waiting behind a locked door, deciding how they wanted to hit me. She was sitting at her desk when I opened the door. Perfect posture. Perfect suit. Perfect disdain. She didn't even look up. 30 days, she said, signing a document without pausing. "I'm sure you'll land somewhere. Appropriate. Somewhere appropriate. People like you." She didn't have to say it out loud. It was already written in every raised brow and clipped syllable she'd ever thrown at me. I walked out of her office with the eviction notice crumpling slightly in my hand. My heart beating in a rhythm I didn't recognize. Because underneath the embarrassment, beneath the disbelief, there was something else, something sharp, cold and strangely calm, not rage, not fear, not panic, calculation. She thought she was ending something. She had no idea she'd just started it. She thought she was pushing me out of her building. She had no idea she'd just handed me the blueprint for taking everything she owned. And as the elevator doors closed in front of me, I felt it fully for the first time. She wasn't evicting me from a building. She was waking something up. And she was going to regret it. Before all of this, before the eviction notice, before the humiliation, before the quiet storm building behind my ribs, I actually thought Halbrook Tower was where my comeback would begin. Funny how life sets up the battlefield long before you know you're in a war. A year earlier, I walked into this building carrying everything I owned in one small box. Not even a dramatic metaphor, a literal box. My old firm had collapsed after a scandal I had nothing to do with, but guilt by association spreads like wildfire, and I was burned down to the ashes. No job, no safety net. Just a resume that suddenly felt like a cursed artifact. I chose Halbrook Tower for one reason. It was affordable. Not cheap, never cheap, but within reach for someone rebuilding from scratch. A small office on the 6th floor with peeling paint, dim lighting, and the constant hum of an ancient AC unit that sounded like it resented being alive. But it was mine. My starting point. My first step back into a world that had spit me out. The first time I met Marissa Halbrook, she barely gave me a glance. Just a clipboard, a signature line, and a list of rules long enough to regulate a small country. No hanging personal items. No late visitors. No deliveries past 6 p.m. No noise above a whisper. No coffee machines. No microwaves. No food with strong aromas. She liked control, and she loved reminding everyone she had it. Still, I didn't complain. I kept my head down. I worked late nights under the flickering ceiling light, building my client list from zero like I was stitching my future together one thread at a time. Income trickled in, then streamed, then finally started flowing enough for me to breathe again. With every new client, I noticed her watching me subtly at first, then openly. She didn't like seeing a tenant succeed unless it benefited her. And I wasn't the kind of success she appreciated. I didn't brag. I didn't kiss up to her. I didn't try to impress her. To someone like Marissa, that made me unpredictable, and unpredictable people bother her, the better I did. The colder she became, little comments slipped out like poison-tipped arrows. Growing too fast can be dangerous. You're lucky this space opened up. Not everyone fits corporate environments. Not everyone fits. I let it roll off me. I had bigger things to worry about: bills, deadlines, making sure I wouldn't slip backward into the darkness I'd only just crawled out of. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't possibly know, then was that the building I thought was sheltering me was actually a trap tightening around me inch by inch. Because while I was rebuilding my life inside her walls, Marissa was dealing with a secret pressure of her own, pressure that made her bitter, pressure that made her paranoid, pressure that made her see me not as a tenant, but as a threat. The first real sign came one morning when I found her standing outside my office, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. She didn't speak. She just looked at me like she was calculating something, measuring me, deciding something. At the time, I didn't understand. I thought she was just being her usual self-cold, irritated superior, but looking back now, that wasn't irritation in her eyes. It was fear, and fear makes people do desperate things. Desperate things like inventing violations, fabricating complaints, and preparing an eviction. Long before she taped that notice to my door, if I had known what she was planning, maybe I would have prepared differently. Maybe I would have defended myself sooner. Maybe I would have walked away before the war started, but I didn't. I stayed. I worked. I rebuilt. And in doing so, I unknowingly set myself up perfectly for the moment she tried to erase me, because the day she did, I discovered something she never wanted anyone to know. Her empire wasn't stable. Her building wasn't profitable, and her power wasn't real. She picked the wrong person to push out. And by the time she realized it, it was already far too late. The day after the eviction notice, I walked into my office and the space felt different, smaller, tighter, like the walls were listening. My desk, my files, my laptop. Everything looked temporary, as if the building had already decided I didn't belong. I spread the notice flat across my desk and read every line carefully. Every accusation was a lie. Every violation was manufactured. Every reason was designed to make the eviction look clean, legal. UNCHALLENGEABLE. Noise complaints from offices that had been empty for months. Unauthorized visitors. I worked alone. Commercial foot traffic. My meetings were all virtual. It wasn't just unfair, it was strategic. She wanted me gone. Not later. Not eventually. Now. Anger finally found me then. Not explosive. Not loud, but cold and steady, settling into me like a second spine. I knew I had two choices: fight her head on and lose, or step back and figure out why a woman obsessed with control was suddenly desperate enough to push out a quiet tenant on the 6th floor. So I started paying attention, and the cracks showed fast. Tenants whispering in elevators. 2 companies moving out in the same week. The maintenance staff working shorter hours, supplies disappearing. Lights flickering more often, not because they were old, but because no one was paying to fix them. Then I overheard something in the lobby, just a passing comment from a contractor on his phone. But it hit like a match against gasoline. I'm not doing another job there until she pays the last invoice. That woman's drowning. Drowning. The word stuck to me like glue. Everything clicked at once. She didn't evict me because I caused problems. She did it because she was in trouble. And she needed my office empty to make the building look profitable for a sale. She was struggling to close. I wasn't an issue. I was an obstacle. And the moment I understood that, the fear inside me vanished. Because obstacles can be moved. But they can also move back. She wanted to push me out quietly. Instead, she had just handed me the first clue to her biggest weakness. And for the first time since this began, I realized something that made my pulse calm instead of panic. I wasn't the one who should be afraid. She was. Once I understood that Marissa wasn't pushing me out because of anything I'd done, but because she was secretly drowning, everything inside me shifted. Fear drained out. Anger settled in. But underneath both, something sharper formed: clarity. And clarity is the most dangerous weapon anyone can hold. I needed proof. Not guesses, not rumors, proof of what was really happening behind her polished office door. So I started with the people who always knew the truth before anyone else. The maintenance crew. It took only one conversation. Javed. The janitor who worked the late shift paused when I asked how things were going. He looked around, making sure no cameras were pointed our way. Then he sighed in a tired, defeated way that said he'd been holding this in for a long time. She hasn't paid us properly in 2 months, he said quietly. She keeps promising next week. But next week never comes. 2 months. That alone was enough to raise suspicion. Halbrook Tower wasn't big, but missing payroll meant something deeper was wrong. I pressed a little further. Is it just the maintenance team? He shook his head. Contractors too. Electricians stopped coming. Security says their hours were cut without warning. She's pretending everything is fine, but things are falling apart from the inside. Inside, exactly where she didn't want anyone looking. I thanked him and walked away with one truth echoing in my mind. This building wasn't just unstable, it was bleeding. But the real betrayal didn't reveal itself until the next afternoon. When I confronted her, not aggressively, not loudly, just calmly enough to unsettle her, I knocked on her office door. Tap, tap, tap. She looked up with that tight smile she used as a weapon. If this is about the notice, the decision is final. I know, I said. I'm not here to argue. I just wanted to understand why. She blinked once, then twice, as if she didn't expect me to stay composed. Why what? Why the sudden urgency? Why the fabricated violations? Why now? Her smile faltered for half a second. Just a flicker. But it was enough to confirm she knew exactly what she'd done. You violated the lease. She said flatly. No, I replied. You needed me gone. Silence filled the room like lead, heavy, suffocating. For a moment I thought she might drop the mask, admit the truth. But instead, she leaned back, crossed her arms, and did something worse. She dismissed me completely. You're overthinking this. Some tenants simply don't fit the building's vision. I'm helping you land somewhere more realistic. Realistic. There it was again, that quiet, polished cruelty she was so good at delivering. That tone made of silk and knives. The kind that cuts without leaving blood. But she wasn't done, not even close. She stood up, walked around the desk, and placed a manicured hand on my shoulder as if I were a child she was consoling. You've done well for yourself, she said softly. Better than I expected. But you don't understand the bigger picture here. This building is meant for established companies' real corporate offices, not freelancers and
temporary projects.
Temporary. She said it so casually, so confidently, so deliberately, that something inside me snapped, not loudly, but cleanly, like a bone that had been bent too far, finally giving way. She wasn't pushing me out because of a sale. She wasn't doing this because she had no choice. She was doing it because she had already decided I didn't belong in her world, that I was beneath her, that my success was an accident she intended to correct. The fabricated violations, the sudden timing, the cold indifference. Everything pointed to one truth. She didn't want to save her building. She wanted to save her pride. She needed to clean up the tenant list before presenting it to potential buyers. And in her mind, removing me was part of polishing her image. I left her office and walked into the hallway with a calm so complete it almost scared me. Not because I accepted defeat, but because I finally understood the real betrayal. She didn't just try to evict me from a building. She tried to evict me from the idea of success. She tried to erase me, before anyone else could see what I was becoming. And in that moment, one quiet, undeniable truth settled into my mind like a stone at the bottom of a river. If she was willing to do this to protect her image, she had no idea what I was willing to do to protect my future, and she was about to learn the cost of underestimating me. The moment I stepped out of her office, I stopped being a tenant. I stopped being someone she could push around with fake violations and smug smiles. I became something else, something she didn't see coming, something she never prepared for. I became her problem, and the best way to deal with a problem is not to fight it head-on, it's to study it. Take it apart piece by piece until you know exactly where it breaks. So that's what I did. My revenge didn't begin with anger. It began with research. For 2 nights straight, I buried myself in public records, property filings, tax statements, and every scrap of financial data tied to Halbrook Tower. It didn't take long to find the cracks she'd been hiding. The building wasn't just struggling. It was collapsing. Her vacancy rate was higher than she reported. Her maintenance expenses were overdue. Her loan, one she'd refinanced twice, was approaching a deadline she couldn't meet. And worst of all for her, she had applied for a sale but had been denied twice because the valuation didn't match the debt. The building wasn't profitable. It was a sinking ship, and she was scrambling to throw passengers overboard to keep it afloat. But what she didn't know, what she could never have imagined, was that someone like me had the one thing she didn't: access to money she didn't know existed. Months earlier, a client I helped through a merger owed me a favor, one he considered life-changing. His words, not mine. He had told me, half-jokingly, "If you ever need something big, call me." This qualified. So I called him. He didn't ask for details. He just said, "Send me the numbers." Within a few hours, he called back with a sentence that set everything into motion. "If she's really selling, I can get you the funding to buy the entire building for less than the debt she owes." Buy the building. Buy her building. A week ago, I was worried about paying rent. Now, I had a pathway to owning the entire tower. The irony was almost poetic. But revenge can't rely on hope. It requires precision. So step by step, I built the plan. Step 1, force the cracks to spread, not illegally, just by letting the truth breathe. I quietly reached out to the tenants who were considering leaving. I didn't push them. I didn't persuade them. I simply told them the facts. The building was unstable, repairs weren't coming, and she was hiding financial problems. They made their own decisions. 3 moved out within 2 weeks. 2 more began negotiating exit clauses. Her revenue dropped faster than she could stop it. Step 2, make her believe she still had control. Every time she passed me in the hallway, I smiled politely. Every time she sent a cold email, I replied professionally. Every time she tried to intimidate me, I stayed calm. Nothing unsettles a controlling person more than the feeling that their control isn't landing. She thought I was breaking down. She thought I was preparing to leave quietly. Meanwhile, I was preparing to take everything. Step 3, wait for the perfect moment. Buildings don't just crumble. Financially, they hit thresholds, breaking points. I knew from her loan documents that she had 30 days to prove the building was stable or the bank would intervene. She needed 2 new tenants before the deadline, but the vacancies were rising, not shrinking. She was running out of time, and she didn't know she was running straight into me. Step 4, strike. The moment she panics, I didn't have to create her. Collapse. She was already collapsing. All I had to do was be standing there with an offer when she hit the bottom. So I waited. 2 weeks. 3 weeks. Every day she grew more brittle, more frantic, more desperate. And then it happened. She called a building-wide meeting. A rarity for her. Her voice trembled as she talked about new opportunities, fresh investment, strategic restructuring. It was code for one thing. She needed a buyer, and she needed one fast. That same night, I sent my offer to her broker, clean, strategic, backed by a major investor. And timed perfectly, landing exactly when she had no leverage left. She didn't know it came from me. Not yet. She wouldn't find out until the papers were signed, until the ink dried, until she shook hands with the buyer. And I walked into the room. My revenge wasn't just to survive her eviction. It was to replace her. To stand exactly where she thought I didn't belong. And for the first time since this began, I felt something steady and powerful settle into place. Not anger, not fear. Control. The kind she thought only she could have. And soon, she would learn what it feels like to lose it. The morning of the showdown felt colder than usual, as if the entire building was holding its breath. I walked through the front doors with the purchase file tucked under my arm, the edges still crisp, the ink barely dry. Every step echoed through the lobby, bouncing off the walls like a warning bell. I wasn't nervous, just focused. This was the moment everything had been building toward. When I turned the corner toward the office, I could already hear her voice, sharp, irritated. Bossy. Mrs. Langley was arguing with the new temporary manager, demanding to know why her access codes had stopped working. I almost laughed at the irony. She had no idea she had already lost. When she spotted me, her expression twisted. You, she snapped, the vowels somehow both stretched and strangled. Why are you here? You're supposed to be out by Friday. And don't think that little stunt with your rent makes you special. I stepped closer, keeping my voice calm. You might want to hold your anger, I said softly. You're going to need it. Her eyes narrowed. What is that supposed to mean? I opened the folder slowly, letting the silence grow thick, letting her feel the shift before she even understood it. I placed the papers on the desk, sliding them toward her like a dealer handing over the final card in a very long game. She looked down. Read the first page, then the second, her face drained of color. No, she whispered. No, this is impossible. It's legal, I replied. Fully processed, fully signed, fully funded. Her hand trembled as she gripped the pages. You bought it? She croaked. You bought my building? I let the words settle, a quiet victory ringing louder than any shouted one. Yes, I said. And as of midnight last night, you no longer have any authority here. She stumbled back, reaching for the chair behind her, sitting down as if her legs had betrayed her. You can't do this, she whispered. You can't just... You tried to evict me, I reminded her gently. For no reason other than you enjoyed power you never really had. Her lip curled, bitterness rising like poison to the surface. You're nothing but a tenant. You don't belong in ownership. People like you, people like me, I interrupted, just became your landlord. The new manager stepped inside then, placing a neat envelope onto the desk. Your vacate notice, he said professionally. Effective immediately. You have 2 hours to collect your belongings. Security will assist you. Her head snapped toward him. You can't fire me. It's not a firing, I said softly. It's an eviction. She froze. The word hit her like a glass wall she never saw coming. And then the breakdown began. Loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet unraveling as the reality settled in. Every threat she'd thrown at me, every smug insult, every moment she tried to humiliate me had circled right back to her. I watched her cling to the papers, as if holding them tighter might reverse the ink itself, but nothing could. Her reign ended the moment. I signed the deed. Outside the office window, tenants gathered, whispering excitedly. Some smiled when they saw me. A few even clapped. For months, they'd lived under her petty rules and sudden fines. They didn't just need a building owner, they needed a new world inside these tired old walls. And they were finally going to get one. I turned to leave, pausing only long enough to say the line I had been saving, the truth she needed to hear. You should never push someone out of their home unless you're absolutely sure they won't push back harder. Her eyes lifted to mine. Desperate. Beaten. Silent. Then I walked away, down the hallway, past the tenants, through the lobby. I no longer walked at the resident, but As the owner of everything she once controlled, the building felt different. Now, brighter somehow, like it knew it had been reclaimed. And as the heavy front door closed behind me, I felt something settle in my chest, not triumph, not revenge, just peace. The kind you earn, the kind no one can take away. The days that followed felt unreal, like walking through a life I had secretly been building without even knowing it. Every morning I woke up in the same apartment, but it felt different, lighter, freer, finally mine in a way it had never been before. No more tense messages taped to my door. No more surprise inspections. No more bitter footsteps pacing the hallway at odd hours. Word spread quickly through the building. Tenants who used to avoid eye contact with management now approached me openly, some shy, others emotional. "We heard what happened," they'd say. "Thank you for standing up. It's about time someone put her in her place." I didn't do it for applause, but the gratitude meant something. It made the whole journey feel larger than just a personal fight. It was like the building itself was exhaling after years of being held hostage by her pettiness. Within a week, her office was empty, stripped of the framed certificates she hung to intimidate people, the thick binders of arbitrary rules she weaponized. Even the heavy perfume scent she left behind like a warning. The new manager settled in smoothly. We set up plans for better maintenance, fairer notices, clearer communication. I didn't want revenge to end with her humiliation. I wanted better for everyone who lived here. One evening, I stood on the rooftop, watching the city lights flicker under a soft breeze. I thought about how close I had been to losing everything. My home, my sense of security, my dignity, and then I thought about how close she had been to keeping all her power until one signature shifted. Everything. It struck me that sometimes life doesn't give you justice. Sometimes you have to take the long, painful, stubborn path to build it yourself. And standing there on that quiet rooftop, I finally felt it, that solid, grounding feeling of having rewritten the ending no one expected. My ending. My home. My victory. If there's one truth I carried out of that building war, it's this: power isn't about titles or control, it's about who refuses to break when pressured. She pushed, thinking I would fold. Instead, she taught me exactly how far I was willing to go to protect what mattered. Revenge wasn't the victory. Owning my future was. And sometimes the people who try the hardest to push you out end up handing you the key to everything you were meant to claim.